The sort of default setting that all of us grow up with is to live inside of imaginary borders. Consider that you might not now be on the absolute best path for the rest of your life. There is a better life that could be engineered for you and by you. It could open your mind to the possibilities. And I think that very much fits with the borderless theme.
Tired of doing the same thing day after day? Seeing the same people talk about the same things? Hearing politicians promise the same BS?
Don't let anybody tell you that it's corporations and businesses that create jobs.
My change in party will enable me to be re-elected.
Too many OBGYNs aren't able to practice their love with women all across this country.
Well, you don't have to anymore. Welcome to the Borderless Podcast, your guide to traveling, investing, and living beyond borders, where we talk about living the life that you want to live, where you want to live it. From beautiful San Miguel de Allende, smack in the middle of Mexico, with your hosts, Jonathan Lockwood and James Guzman.
Welcome to the Borderless Podcast, traveling, investing, and living beyond borders. Jonathan Lockwood here, along with James Guzman. This is the podcast that talks about living outside of your borders. James, how are you today?
I'm doing very well. You know, it's a nice day here in San Miguel de Allende. Good weather, despite what's going on up in the States right now.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we're here at the end of the year, and temperatures are still reaching highs in the mid-70s or mid-20s Celsius, typically falling down to the low 50s, sometimes into the 40s or around 10 Celsius at night. So it's a beautiful place to live. You know, I'm coming from 8 years in Phoenix where just the insanity of the heat was just too much for me. I couldn't take it.
Yeah. And then before that, Detroit. No, so I mean, I'm sure that was.
Yeah, that's a different world there in Michigan. So what about festivals this weekend? Events going on in San Miguel, James? You know of any?
No, I don't think so. There have been people in town, but yeah, not a.
Here's the thing. Just when I think there are no more festivals, there are more festivals.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's something going on somewhere. I think I'm going to hit Garufa sometime this weekend, James.
Sure.
That's one of my favorite new restaurants,
great.
Argentinian steakhouse. So our guest on the Borderless podcast today is Pete Sisco. He is an entrepreneur, author, digital nomad, and writer of the new book, The Freedom App. He is a married father of 6, grew up in Canada, but moved to the U.S. in his 20s. He's authored and co-authored 6 titles published by McGraw-Hill on the subject of efficient strength training, and is also a successful self-published author and publisher. His success as an owner of several online businesses allowed him to leave the USA in his 40s and live in Belize, Mexico, right here, China, Thailand, England, and Spain. He and his wife have been traveling the world nonstop as digital nomads since 2006. Pete's most recent book is The Freedom App, How to Build True Freedom Through Contractual Republics. So while the Borderless podcast is focused on entrepreneurship, living internationally, and not really focused on politics, it's obvious that a great share of those interested in these things also happen to be lovers of freedom. This makes Pete Sisco a great guest for us since he's a very successful entrepreneur, has lived all over the planet, and in his new book, The Freedom App, zeroes in on freedom, both for the individual as well as the whole world. It's an outline of a social system to supplant democracy with a system that would allow every individual to live his own life as he or she sees fit, without fear of coercion from governments or other individuals, under conditions of maximum global human freedom. Welcome, Pete Sisco.
Thanks, guys. It's really nice to be here.
All right, it's great to talk to you. I saw you speaking at last year's Passport to Freedom conference in Las Vegas. And saw there was a bunch of great speakers there, but I really enjoyed yours the most. I think it was great, so I thought I'd contact you and talk to you.
Yeah, thanks. That was a great conference. Nomad Capitalist does a nice job on those.
Yeah. So there was a lot of things that I thought would be interesting to talk to you about. I mean, you started this business with a different type of strength training. I was looking at some of the things you did. I found a video online of you with the interview with Tony Robbins this morning. That was pretty interesting. And so you've been a very successful author, and the speech that you had, you're basically saying you were an evangelist for online businesses and living beyond borders and that kind of thing. So I just thought that was great. You are exactly seems like you have the same mission as we do.
Yeah, I've been, my wife and I both have been living this lifestyle for quite a while. And I got started writing books that were traditionally published because back in the early 90s, that's the only kind of publishing there was. And I transitioned to ebooks. I actually had my first website in 1996, which is, the Stone Age of the internet. Right. And I created an ebook around 2001, and that was my first sample of making online income. And it didn't take me too long to realize that it's inherently liberating because it's completely portable. You can live anywhere in the world, and it just changes everything.
Yeah. Pete, I'm excited to talk to you because, so I imagine we're somewhere in a similar age range here. And there was a time when I was pretty seriously into strength training and bodybuilding. And I always used to pay attention to Mike Mentzer years ago. And that, of course, led to Arthur Jones, the Nautilus guy, which led to Ellington Darden. But I've heard your name and John Little's name bandied about quite a lot. And it's we won't spend a lot of time on this, but let's just talk about what the basic point is that you've made in so many of your books.
Well, my basic point is that if you know anything about strength training, you hear the term high intensity a lot. People are aware of the fact that the intensity of the lifting you do is very important, and that intensity needs to be progressive from workout to workout. It needs to increase if you want to build new muscle. The glaring thing that I noticed is that no one had a way to measure intensity. There's no units. There's no unit to measure. It's almost unbelievable. It's like talking about how fast a runner can go, but not using miles per hour or feet per minute or, how many meters covered in 10 seconds. There's no measurement of intensity. So I came up with a few ways to measure the intensity of lifting. And when you do that, you can ensure progressive overload, and you can also make your training very, very efficient because you begin to discover how little you actually have to do in order to achieve that progressive intensity. So that's what I've written about for over 20 years now. You mentioned Tony Robbins, and that was a lucky bounce for me. Someone who works with Tony told him about my type of training, and he had great success with it and came and spent a day with me in Idaho. That was very, very beneficial because he told his market about it, and of course his market was massive, and that was the lucky break.
Tony Robbins came to you.
Yeah, he did. He flew his Lear 35A jet to Boise, Idaho, and spent a whole day with me.
Yeah, I mean, but that's just, it shows you, if you have your niche and you figured out what you enjoyed doing, what you enjoyed talking about, and you just did it for 20 years, and you have little bumps along the way, and maybe I'm sure it was hard at times. You didn't think you were ever going to, be able to be as successful as you have been, but you just kept at it.
Well, it's true. And the thing is that, there's sort of two compartments to my life. One is, that work that I've done and I've enjoyed doing for all that time. And then the other compartment is the way to engineer that so that it gives me maximum. And that is the thing that really resonates with me. I just happen to be wired that way. I think that, human beings innately do best in an environment of freedom, and I see all the ways in our society and in our culture, and people are channeled down a certain path that is beneficial to other people and not necessarily beneficial to them. And it really takes effort to counteract that and to engineer your own best life. And I'm pretty passionate about that.
There was a time, Pete, I'm guessing, when all of this occurred to you. As you say, people innately do best in an environment of freedom. Can you remember when that was? When was it that you came to embrace these things and being an entrepreneur?
Well, it goes way back. It goes back to my teen years. And next month I'll be 56 years old. So it goes back to early in my life, and I actually was self-employed from an early age. I left college early, and my brother and I started a business, and I've been entrepreneurial all my life, really. And I think that I don't want to get too philosophical about it. I have a feeling that I'm just sort of wired that way. I'm one of those guys who sort of naturally goes in that direction on the entrepreneurial side, and I think it's really an outgrowth of that desire to sort of control and engineer my own life in a way that I want, instead of being manipulated into what other people want. So that's why it's so exciting to me, and why it resonates that we have all these technologies now that are coming to the fore that allow the individual to operate with a freedom that just was not possible even 20 or 30 years ago. If you wanted to live anywhere in the world 20, 30, 50 years ago, there weren't many ways to do it. You either had to have a really high net worth so that passive income from investments could support you anywhere in the world, or you had to be some kind of an artist that could sort of have a portable job of some kind that you could take anywhere and never needed an employer. There's lots of portable jobs, but most of them you need an employer. So just a few decades ago, living like we can live now, as you call it, borderless, it was very, very difficult. And now virtually anyone can do it. And they just don't know it. People listening to this, a lot of them, in my experience, will be thinking, yeah, it's great for them, but I don't think it won't work for me. I can't do that. But they can do it. The tools are right there. You don't even have to reinvent any wheels. The tools are right there waiting to be picked up.
Yeah, I think that the information technology and the internet in general, what it's given us is ways that we can get past these gatekeepers that were there in the past. With the printing press, it allowed people to read books that had already been written, and this allows everybody to pretty much be an author of material. And today you can pretty much be your own media company, as far as, doing podcasts like this, videos, writing books, all these different types of things that you can do. That's really unprecedented. We talk a lot about this, giving people ways that they can do this type of thing and just do it themselves, rather than having to get permission to follow your passion.
Well, that's it, James. And what's happening is we are evolving towards a marketplace where every individual can create his own market. So, in your case, if you can have 5,000 or 10,000 or 50,000 people who listen to your podcasts, take your advice, and buy things that you create or you recommend, that becomes your own market. Those 50,000 people are your personal market, and you can make a living if you're living in Mexico or Thailand or somewhere in South America. It doesn't matter to them. If you provide the value, they will be your customer. And when you realize that individuals have the power to create these sort of micro marketplaces, it's tremendously empowering.
Yeah, that goes well into something I wanted to have you talk a little bit about. And in your speech, you mentioned what your favorite country was and your favorite economy was, which I thought was really great. Can you talk a little bit about that? Yeah,
my favorite country in the world, it has 1 billion English-speaking people, and 100% of them have computers and or smartphones. And the economy in this country is over $1 trillion a year, and it's growing at about 15% a year. It's a fantastic economy full of 1 billion educated English-speaking people. and the country is the internet.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's true. You know, a lot of people, they have this debate. Is the United States going to be the biggest economy in 10, 20 years? Is the Chinese economy going to overtake them? Is Russia going to grow, or what? I think that really the next superpower is cyberspace. You know, and that's the place to be.
Yeah, and not only that, but here's the thing that anybody listening to this podcast can think about it, because if you think about it in these terms, it's very liberating. If you can find out of the billions of people in the world, 1,000 people who will pay you $10 a month for something of value you give them, then you'll make $10,000 every month. And what do you care? Out of those 1,000 people that are your customers, what do you care if 50 of them are in Peru and 88 of them are in the Czech Republic and 127 of them are in the United States? What difference does it make? The countries become irrelevant. All you need is a personal marketplace. And the thing about the internet is you can find those 1,000 people and you can find them for almost free. It's absolutely astonishing. It is more profound than the invention of the printing press. It's in a way it's more profound than the invention of the computer itself, because it is fantastically liberating for every individual anywhere on the planet.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Not just to find, customers or something to, clients to do business with, but, I've used so many online sites, whether it's finding a place to live, now you have Uber and places like this, you have pretty much taxi services, you have dating services, you have all kinds of ways that you can talk to people and reach people that you might agree with, or that you might more like to hang out with, rather than even your next door neighbor or somebody in your city. It might be somebody in India. You never know that you relate more to. So, it really just opens a lot of doors.
And, in the same way, just as Pete, you say, who cares where your customers are? Customers are saying, who cares where your provider is? And that's worked that way in my field. So I do voiceovers, radio and television voiceovers, film narrations, things like that. And this wasn't always the case. I would say it was along about 10 years ago when it got to a point when people stopped booking time in studios and everybody just had their own studio. And now I'm able to live wherever I want and do my voiceovers from right there. So it's worked out in both ways for people.
Yeah, exactly. I've used a guy in New Zealand who creates graphics for me. I've used him for 10 years. I've never met the guy. It's just to use your term, it's borderless. It doesn't matter to me that the guy's in New Zealand. I've used work of people in the Philippines, all over the world, and this is the leg up that a guy can get. A guy can live in an impoverished village in Southeast Asia, and he can lift himself up to very substantial wealth with nothing more than his internet connection and his own abilities. And that's just unprecedented in human history. And it also psychologically opens people's eyes to the fact that these borders do exist, and they're artificial, and they are really meant to control people and in many ways to harm them. And I don't mean physically harm them, but it limits your choices in life when you have all these borders, and having your choices limited isn't good for you.
Absolutely. And just, to let you know, the idea behind Borderless is not just national borders. I think you've caught on to that, is that it's also psychological borders, all kinds of psychological borders, cultural borders, or, all kinds of things that people put in your mind that keep you back from achieving the life that you want to live. That's
exactly it. And that's, off the top here, we talked about that a little bit, where I said that, the culture and the society is really constructed to channel people down a path that is good for somebody else, but not necessarily good for you.
Right.
And almost never the best thing for you. A lot of countries are tolerable, but you couldn't call it the best way to function. And there are just thousands of examples that we probably shouldn't go into, because it just turns into a rant about what's wrong with the world.
No, I totally get this, Pete. I mean, like James mentioned earlier, I come from Michigan, so Detroit, Flint, Michigan. There's a lot of great entrepreneurs, obviously, who've come out of Michigan, but there is a spirit there that I think is a bit stronger than in many other parts of the United States. That is, I got to join the group. I got to get the job. The people who are looking to make their way themselves, to start their own business. Do you know how many people fail the first 5 years? There's a lot of that going around there. But aside from that, as you mentioned earlier, there are a lot of people, a lot of young people out there who would really like to do some of the stuff that you did, but they feel a little hopeless. And I suppose the thing that we can take from what you just said earlier is take heart. Guys, gals who would like to maybe live internationally or make your own way, have your own business. If there was ever a time to make that happen, it is now.
Oh, the thing is, on the subject of putting your money where your mouth is, I have 6 kids and they're all in their 20s now. And right now, they live in 5 different countries on 4 different continents.
Wow. Yeah.
And they support themselves in different ways. Let's see, 4 out of 6 have done it with internet income. So they've been able to live independently in Mexico, Ethiopia, China, Canada, Thailand. It's this is something that I genuinely encourage young people to embrace, and that extends as far as my own family, who have had considerable success with this. They live life on their own terms, which is really my yardstick for whether or not a person is successful. That happens to be my personal. I'm not suggesting it's a universal yardstick that should be applied to everyone, but in my case, if you can live life on your own terms to the greatest extent possible, that's my definition of success.
Nice work, Dad. No, yeah. Really, I'd be proud if I were you.
So, obviously, you're good at giving young people advice about this type of thing. What if somebody came to you that wanted to, they say, okay, I'm sold on this idea. So how do I get started? What's usually the first thing that you would recommend somebody do to get started in something like this?
Well, as you mentioned off the top with my bio, I do have several online businesses, and one of them is that my wife also has her own online businesses. We mentor and coach people who want to do what I call safely leave the rat race. The steps are fairly simple, and they're well established. There are 5 steps. There is a systematic way to go about it, and it is foolproof in the sense that if you just follow the steps, the online income that you want to create will manifest.
Pete, we're gonna take a moment here to thank one of our sponsors, but actually, I think maybe we do want to talk about that. I mean, we want to also, when we come back, talk a little bit about your book, The Freedom App, but this idea of mentoring people to, as you say, safely leave the rat race might be exactly what a lot of people are looking for and can benefit from. But today's Borderless podcast is brought to you by the Condescending Group, your online leader in promoting moral superiority. For some time now, the Condescending Group has been sponsoring meetups in many local areas throughout the globe. So if you think you'd benefit from a wonderful dose of self-righteousness, they'd like you to seriously consider it. The Condescending Group is aware that perhaps all around you, people are succeeding. And while that might be just fine for them, to you, their success can feel like a reproach, since your life of appreciating inexpensive wine, shitty art, and taking pictures of one another hasn't necessarily produced any real-world value. But the condescending group reminds you that you need no substantive reason to feel good about yourself. Your beingness, knowingness, and doingness are all you need. So come to a condescending meetup in a location near you. Find out where at thecondescendinggroup.com. The Condescending Group, they care more than you. Okay, so we're back with Pete Sisco. He is an entrepreneur, author, digital nomad, father to 6 children, writer of the new book, The Freedom App. So why don't we take just a moment to talk about your book, The Freedom App. I love the title you gave to it because app conjures up an idea of something on somebody's smartphone or computer. So tell us a little bit about your book, Pete.
Well, the premise behind the book is that freedom is a very loose term in our culture. Basically, every country, from communist China to Soviet Russia to the United States, all stand for freedom, and they all tell their citizens they live in freedom. And the reason you can do that is because no one defines the term freedom right from the start. No one defines it. So the definition of freedom that I use is that it's the condition that exists when every individual has complete control of his or her own property, life and property, because really your life is your property. But if you live in a circumstance where you control your life and property, then I say that meets the definition of freedom. And if everybody in a society does that, then you could say the society is a free society. And when you apply that definition to the world today, you immediately realize there actually is no country where every individual is in complete control of his own property, because there's always this state that is over top of the individual and makes arbitrary rules and takes an arbitrary percentage of your production, your income, every year for your entire life. And it just takes it. And if you don't give it up, they put you in a cage. So that tortures the definition of freedom to call people who live in that circumstance free. So the idea behind my book and a Contractual Republic is that we could construct a society where people interact between themselves under contractual terms. And that means it's voluntary and it's agreed to by both parties or all parties. And if you systematically construct a society where every interaction is by mutual agreement, you in fact create a truly free society for the first time in human history.
I completely agree with that. I think that, as we were talking about before, the implications of information technology and the internet and things like this, it has a potential to completely change the landscape, how society organizes itself. I'm really interested into seeing what it looks like on the other end of this transition to the information age. If it's going to be a larger state or a smaller, maybe decentralized type thing like you're talking about. That's certainly something that I would rather see.
Well, you can see the decentralization happening in all kinds of industries. So that trend, I think, can only accelerate. And as people become more and more independent-minded, they get more mindful of the fact that the state is really impinging on them in almost every area. I mean, I think it's true to say every area. I don't think there's any area of your life or any property that you can own that is not controlled and regulated by the state. And once you become really conscious of that, you naturally sort of gravitate towards alternatives. And the problem that we have is there is no alternative. There's no alternative in the marketplace. You can live in a nice democratic country, where people aren't overtly abused. And if you don't like it, if it's not good enough for you, there is no alternative. There's nothing else in the marketplace. The democracy is as good as it gets. And the problem is in a democracy, 51% get to dictate terms to the other 49%. And if you're in the 49% and everybody is, in some respect, everybody's a minority on some issue, you don't have any rights. People have voted and they dictate the terms, and that's what it is. So right now there's no alternative to that in the marketplace. And when an alternative arrives, and the alternative that I'm proposing is a contractual republic where people interact with each other on contractual terms that are meaningful in that there's a way to police it, not to go into all of the technicalities of the operational function of it. But there are ways, if you and I, Jonathan, contract on something and we agree to certain terms and one of us breaches those terms, there's a way for that to not be profitable for you. So that, if I renege on something and cheat you out of $100, that could end up costing me $500 or $1,000 or a lot more than that. So there's a total disincentive to not honor any agreement. So when that begins to get a foothold in the market as an alternative way for people to interact with each other, I think that it will supplant the coercive state system that we've had for a couple of thousand years.
Well, that would be so refreshing. We talked at the beginning of the podcast about how the Borderless podcast is not about focusing on the political. And yet at the same time, if you're listening to this podcast, if you have an interest in creating your own life outside of the borders other people have created for you, if you want a location-independent business, if you want to live internationally and make your own way, this is stuff that we need to talk about and deal with. All of us do. Because if we want that, we're talking about freedom here, and freedom has been for many, many years and for a long time now being encroached.
Yeah, and something, another way to look at what Pete was saying is switching from kind of an employee-based governance system to one that's a client-based governance system. What I mean by that is that now, whether people realize it or not, your government pretty much treats you like their employee, or some would say a slave. You're their property and you work for them, whether you like it or not. Now, with the ability of travel and this type of thing, what could be a possibility in the future is more of a client-based governance system, meaning that you can be under some sort of a governance system, if we want to use that word, but only on a contractual basis, like he's saying, and only as long as both people agree to it and both agree to a contract. Presently, you work for an employee-based system, like I'm saying, and they claim to have a contractual agreement, which is a social contract, but that's a whole nother long topic. But
yeah, it's a unilateral contract,
right,
subject to arbitrary change by one party,
right? That nobody's ever seen before. But so that's just another way to look at it, as more of a client base. That's sure, if you want to be part, everybody has a different way that they want to live. They have different people they want to have a very, some people want to have a large welfare state. Some other people want to have one with none at all. Some people, and that's fine. You can try that out. You can try ones where they have very harsh rules against alcohol or drugs, and then other people want to live in another place that it's not like that. And everybody should be able to do that, just in a contractual basis. And if you don't want to be there anymore, then you can leave.
That is exactly right, and that is I think the Achilles heel of a lot of sort of social philosophies is, step one is to get 7 billion people to agree with this, and it's just not going to happen in the real world. There are people who want to live under, for example, Sharia law, and it means a lot to them. It's a high personal priority for them to follow to the letter Sharia law. And they want to interact with other people who feel the same way they do. And you need a social system that will accommodate those people. And right next door to them, there might be people who are devoutly Catholic. And they want to follow the leadership of the Pope of the Roman Catholic Church. And it's really, really important to them. That's where their happiness comes from. They want to do that. And you have to find a way to accommodate those people. And next door to those guys are people who are atheists, who want no overtones of religious doctrine in anything that they do. And they want to be able to conduct their lives without being interfered with in exactly the manner that is in accord with those personal beliefs they have. So you have to have a way to accommodate them. And the thing about contractual republics is people can associate themselves with any of these thousands and thousands of republics that manifest all over the world, and they can interact with people deliberately who share the same priorities and values that they do. And in saying that, there would be other people that are much more eclectic and say, well, I don't even care about any of that. I really don't. I'm looking for a graphic artist that can make me a fabulous logo. And I don't care if the guy lives under Sharia law or Catholic doctrine or is an atheist or anything else. I don't care about that. And you need to be able to accommodate those people too. So that is the great flexibility of a contractual republic system, is that it allows every individual to conduct his life the way he sees fit. And it simultaneously protects everybody's life and property.
Completely agree. So, in order to go in this direction, what we're going to need is a lot of people who are entrepreneurs, people that can accumulate wealth in some way in order to, start their own economies, like you were talking about on the internet or in any other way. So maybe we can go back to that. I think that again, there are a lot of people who are sold on this idea, and you're saying that getting a mentor might be the first step. How would somebody go about finding a mentor?
Well, in my case, they could go to PeteSisco.com. My last name is spelled Sisco. And if they went to PeteSisco.com, they would see a link to something that I call Safely Leave the Rat Race. And as I mentioned earlier, there's just 5 steps to systematically moving yourself. And incidentally, there's no drastic step. There's no hang on for dear life step. The nice thing about these internet-based businesses, is that you can build them up while you still have your day job or whatever sources of income you already have. You keep those and you build this other business up on the side. And when it is reliably at a level of income that would sustain you, and it's safe, that's when you can cut the ties with your old life and start living your ideal life.
Yeah, and one thing I kind of want to add in is I think that even before you reach out to a mentor or something like this, let's see if you agree with this, I think that maybe the first step is to, examine yourself, looking within yourself, find out, do you have a bad attitude? Are you, telling yourself that you can't do this? Or are you, being jealous of other people who have done it? Or things like this, looking into yourself, finding out what it is that you actually want in life, what's been holding you back. And that might be the first step. And then the second step is finding somebody like you that is somewhere that you would like to be in life to help you along.
Right. No one likes to admit it, and it's a 100% rule. But we all get conditioned over our lifetime to think, feel, and react in certain ways to certain stimulus, and it's pretty common for some of those reactions to be counterproductive and even self-destructive by way of developing your independence. There is a tendency for people to doubt their own abilities. And I think that's no accident. I think it starts early. It starts in school where you're supposed to sit down and be quiet and do what you're told, follow instructions, and don't try and move outside the program. And people are conditioned to be obedient and to conform. And it's not easy throwing that off. And for some people, it is really, really difficult to throw it off because they get peer pressure and family pressure. So it's difficult to overcome that. But there are other people who are way past that. They know they would be better off doing something on their own, and they really want to. But they don't know where to start. But they're already sold on the idea of, hey, what I'm doing now is it is not fulfilling me. It's not soul nourishing, rewarding, psychologically stimulating work. I know I can do better. I know I'm meant to do better, and I want to. And they just need guidance down a proven step-by-step path. And it can happen. It's right there. It's right there waiting to be picked up.
Pete, we find people like that all the time. And when you listen to them say some of the things you said, you just get the sense that they're slowly dying inside. They hate their life. They want to figure out some way to change it. And one of the things that we have to realize, I've heard it explained this way. Every organism in the world seeks to expand itself, to improve, to grow. And so we as human beings innately want to grow in some way that seems right to us, but we need to be aware of some of the things that you mentioned earlier. There are people in charge of things, and they seek to grow too. And we need to be aware that if we're looking for a life of freedom, if we're looking to, be the master of our own life, when we look at government, they're sort of, generally speaking, promoting the idea that we need them. We don't need more of ourselves.
Well, that's exactly right. Not to sound like there's any conspiracy. It's just simple cause and effect. But every state wants you to be dependent on that state. They need that. That's part of the symbiotic relationship. Every state, no matter how liberal or conservative or reactionary it is, it wants you dependent on the state. North Korea wants it, and Sweden wants it. So that isn't inherently beneficial to the individual.
Right. And it sounds like from your description of yourself, you were just sort of wired for this idea of creating your own life. I think it took me a while. I was 32 before I left my last actual job. I was 38 before I woke up from a lot of bullshit that I was living through personally in my life. But the reality is, in a way, there's a low level or maybe even high level hypnosis that is going on that's keeping people in these patterns, these courses that people have sort of pushed them on. And so maybe they could use a mentor. Maybe they could use a little information outside of that which they've received their whole lives.
Well, I think that it's essential. The ability to access that kind of thinking now has just exploded with the internet. No matter where you are in the world, you have access to, let's say, more free-minded people who think of alternatives to what is conventional. And this is a really, really great and exciting time to be alive. It's historians are going to look at this time right now for centuries and probably thousands of years. They will look at this period where this transition occurred that empowered the individual like nothing else in human history. And if we're living at this time, and if you're at the early stages of it like we are now, this is when great things can happen for the individual. I can't imagine a more exciting time to be alive in 10,000 years of human history.
We're talking with Pete Sisco, author of the new book, The Freedom App, How to Build True Freedom Through Contractual Republics. You mentioned something a little while ago, Pete, that somehow we've got to talk 7 billion people into the same thing. And I've heard people say this. I want to get your take on it. People will say something along the lines of major improvements don't usually come from authoritarian force, but instead by a better system being created, do that, and the old one kind of falls away. Is that how you think something like this is going to occur?
I think that that's the only way it occurs, because there's no politician who's going to stand up and say, you know what, you don't need me. You don't need me, and you don't need what I represent. You don't need what I claim to provide. And of course, states don't provide anything. They just take from people and then sort of redistribute that around after they save a generous portion for themselves. There's no value created by a state. So they're not going to stand up and say that. So what it takes is people who begin to create alternatives in a small way. And then those alternatives will naturally grow organically. Just like I said with the guy in New Zealand that I've dealt with for 10 years. I just have that guy do work and I pay him. And there's no government forms to fill out. I didn't go through some Ministry of Trade or Department of Commerce to make the deal happen. There is no need whatsoever for a third party that creates terms and conditions that say we get 40%, and if there's anything you do we don't like, we get to put you in a cage. That's not a welcome party in our transaction. So as the quality of those transactions evolves and more safeguards are put in there to keep all the parties in compliance with what they agreed to do, as that matures, we eventually end up with this parallel system of mutual interaction that has huge benefits over a coercive state system. And over time, and I don't know if it'll take 50 years or 300 years, but over time, that coercive state system will actually wither, because there'll be so few people who voluntarily agree that, yeah, that's a system for me. I like that. You take 40% of my lifetime production, you make arbitrary rules, and if you ever catch me breaking one of those rules, even unknowingly, even without intent, you can put me in a cage or take more of my money. I like that system. I'm going to sign up for that.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, a lot of people are they're kind of worried about a collapse in a lot of, especially the Western countries, Japan, such like this. So what you're saying is that what you hope to see, and what I would hope to see also, is a parallel system that we can use, which, if that does occur, and I'd like to know if you think that will occur, but if that does occur, that we can then fall back on this other system.
Yeah, the thing is, we don't have the other system yet. What right. I'm talking about hasn't manifested, and it's not mature enough to support, tens of millions or billions of people. Mm-hmm. So nobody wants a collapse of what we have now, because there'd be a lot of chaos for some amount of time. And historically what happens is you just get a new emperor. The people in Egypt were very happy when they got rid of Mubarak. But, a few years down the road, what do they have now? Right. They have another guy who's in league with the U.S. military apparatus, and, they're not objectively better off than they were. So you don't want to collapse, because it doesn't really do anything. The better term is, you want it to wither gradually as people gravitate to an alternative system. But getting back to your central question was a collapse. I think anybody that's reasonably literate with mathematics can take a look at the financial condition of the four largest currencies: the U.S. dollar, the Japanese yen, the euro, and the British pound. And if you look at the economies that underwrite those four fiat currencies, it's a really, really ugly situation. If your family finances look like any one of those countries, In Japan's case, it would be, well, the family makes $50,000 a year. We owe $100,000 on credit cards. You could see there's really no way out of that, and the U.S. is heading in the same direction. Pretty soon, the amount of money it will take to service the debt, once interest rates increase a little bit, in order to service that debt, you have to start shutting off some other taps. And what are you going to shut off? Social Security, Medicare, military. Those are the big ones. If you start shutting off those taps, there's going to be a lot of people who are upset.
Pete, you gave us a pretty good idea of some of the content in your mentoring program. Take us through what exactly happens when somebody goes to your website, PeteSisco.com. That's Pete, SISCO.com, and clicks on Safely Leave the Rat Race. What happens?
One of the first things that can happen is they can download a free e-booklet called 7 Things That Keep You in the Rat Race. And that goes to the point that you brought up, Jonathan, about people being conditioned to feel like maybe they can't do this. And in my experience, there are 7 things that are the most common that keep people in the rat race. So people might be interested in taking a look at that. I told you that there's 5 steps, and the first step is really the fun one. It's very liberating. It's called finding and researching your niche. And there are exercises and templates that you can go through that begin to get you thinking in terms of the possibilities of what's possible for you and what you would really love to do. And sometimes people have that, the answer to that on the tip of their tongue. If you ask them what they would really, really love to do if they could, they have the answer to that sometimes. But even when they have the answer, they haven't really fleshed it out in terms of, how would that work? What would my day-to-day life, if I was doing that dream thing, what would my day-to-day life consist of? And what would I do to create some amount of value so that I could create that list of customers who want to do business with me? Like I said, that you find those 1,000 people spread all over the world who will gladly, voluntarily pay you $10 a month. 1,000 people pay you $10 a month. You make $10,000 every month. And obviously you can just multiply, you can add as many zeros to that as you care. But if you, in that first step, if you go through the process of visualizing and constructing in your mind exactly what that life would look like for you and what you would be doing, you find that your mind starts working on possibilities and options instead of barriers and restrictions.
So if somebody goes through this program that you have and they're able to achieve this life that they want to, I would just like to give them kind of an image for you. What does a day in the life of Pete Sisco look like?
Well, first of all, my wife and I have been traveling, I'll say nonstop. I mean, obviously we do stop for months at a time in certain places, but we've been doing this now since 2006. So we're past the 8-year mark. So the first thing is we're in a place that we really like to be, like Thailand or Spain or Belize in Central America, which is a really a great place with really nice people. So we're surrounded by all the things that we really want to be there. And we, I'll tell you something about an online business. Most of them, the truth is, the sort of dirty little secret that people don't want to tell you is, you kind of work 365 days a year.
Right.
As you guys see, you're laughing, so I mean, but the thing is, the work you do at a minimum is you just check in and make sure everything's okay. Make sure nothing's derailed, there's no problems, and then you're free to go about your day. I mean, obviously there are days when you work hard and you put in a lot of hours in a week because you're creating something new or you're doing some marketing thing. And the thing to remember, though, is that it's something you're excited about. It's something you want to do. You wake up in the morning and you think, oh, today's the day I'm going to be doing whatever it is. And it's an exciting thing. So the concept of work really transforms. It really changes because you're doing things that you want to do and you're living where you want to live. And there's so many great places, as you guys know, living in Mexico, there are really great places that you can live all over the world for a song. You can live like a prince on hardly any money all over the world, which is great for the people getting started.
Yeah, that's great. And I think you've been kind of taking the strategy of doing three months in different places with your wife. That's just great. I want to be able to do that. You know, presently I have my house here in San Miguel de Allende and everything, and I'm not at the point where I'm able to do that, but that's definitely one of my goals, is to be able to take, you know, whether it's 3-week or 3-month trips in different places around the world, but still have my home base here. I traveled around, you know, just in my suitcase from 2008 up until about a year ago. So what I'm trying to do now is have more of a home base in one place, and then and do that, maybe, you know, get Airbnbs in different places throughout the world and check them out like that.
I think there's a natural evolution to that. We started out traveling all the time. It was just hotels for, 2 years. And, you know, we would move every week or two. And we saw a lot of places, but honestly, it gets a little tiring. You know, you see one more hotel checkout desk and, you know, it's just, you know, people like different things. But after a while, that can get tiring. I think people gravitate towards, hey, why don't we have sort of a home base somewhere? And then, you know, we'll sort of travel from there, do what we want. You know, we're about 14 days away from moving back to Spain. We're gonna move to a city we've never even been to before in Spain, which is that's its own reward, because you walk around like a kid in a candy store.
Yeah,
everything's new.
You're like a child again.
Oh, it is. It's a wonderful thing, and the language.
You don't know how to walk. You don't know how to talk.
I used to worry about language because I speak English only. I know just enough Spanish to be polite, really nothing else, a handful of words in some other languages. And I worried about that. And then experience showed me it's really absolutely nothing to worry about. You can always make yourself understood. We lived in mainland China for a few months, and I was still able to get through every day, buying groceries and going to restaurants and all of those things without knowing a word of Mandarin other than thank you. So the language is no barrier. And it's just really nice to have that sense of wonder again, you know?
Absolutely.
Really, it's a fountain of youth. It's a fountain of youth. It is. You go to some other country that you haven't been to before, you don't know the language. And in some ways, you know, it's you feel like a kid again, because you don't know where to go. You don't know how the city's laid out. You don't know how to ask people because you don't know the language. There's always somebody you can find, especially young people who speak English. Mm-hmm. But there's a great sense of wonder to that I happen to love. You know, some people might really hate that, but if they do, there's all these other technologies. I just put an app on my phone that speaks, I think, 27 languages or 43 languages or something like that. It's absolutely amazing. You speak English into this thing, and then you push the button, and it says it back in Russian or Spanish or German or whatever you need. Yep. $5 for an iPhone app that is, you know, a Star Trek Universal Translator. And it works the other way too. So you push the Russian flag, and the other guy can speak into it, and then your phone tells you what he said in English.
Oh my gosh! What's the name of that app?
I don't know. Let me grab my phone.
Okay.
But you know, I just want to say that I love doing that as well. Just traveling around. There's so many places that I've run across just by accident. You know, whether I'm backpacking or something. and a city or some monument or something that I'd never heard of that just absolutely blows my mind and changes my whole perspective on life. So it's crazy. And, kind of like that app that helps you translate, there's all kinds of things online, tools, when you're traveling. There seems to be, with my generation, there seems to be this culture of travelers that is international, and they're on all these different sites. So I mentioned Airbnb before. That's one. You have like couch surfing. You have all kinds of, people that hang out at hostels and this and that are just, they're traveling. They're more than happy to meet other travelers and hang out with them. And, it's amazing. I just went to Mexico City probably 2 months ago for a week. And I went to a hostel. I had a week. I didn't have a lot going on. So I said, I'll go check out Mexico City for a week. And I went upstairs to the bar that was up there. And I just I ran into these Australian guys and some other girls that were there. And it was a bunch of people. And it was like I automatically had like 30 friends. And we hung out for the whole week. And I had an absolute blast. So, it's just amazing the types of adventures you can have by visiting these new places.
It is, and it expands. It expands your life. You're richer for it. There's all kinds of wealth in this world, and one of the great forms of wealth is experiences, and the opportunities that open up to you when you have portable income and can go anywhere in the world that you want. It's fantastic. We made a new friend when we were living in Belize, and this is quite a few years ago, and at that time I had no real interest in visiting Asia. And he said, "Well, you got to go to Thailand. You got to go to Thailand." But the thing that he said about it resonated to the point that I bought a plane ticket. And what he said was, "Thailand changes you." And I thought that was such a powerful thing for somebody to say. I'd never heard that. You hear about lots of great countries, go to Germany, go to England. You don't hear anybody say it'll change you. And the thing is that we went to Thailand, and it's become one of our favorites. The people there are so friendly. The tagline they use in their advertising is the land of smiles. Mm-hmm. But I find that it's true that the people naturally smile. It's my understanding is it's kind of a Buddhist thing where you should be very happy for the life that you have, and if you're not happy about it, it's sort of it's kind of shame on you for not appreciating how great life is. So for whatever reason, the Thai people just naturally smile, and it might sound like a small thing, but when you're walking around all day long and people deliberately make eye contact with you and smile at you, it really feels nice. I mean, you find yourself doing the same thing. You make eye contact with people on the street and you smile at them, and they do the same to you. And I mean, it's a wonderful feeling to be surrounded by happy people like that.
Yeah, I've really got to check out Thailand. I haven't been there, but so many people tell me that it's a place that you need to go and check out at least once in your life.
Pete, did you get the name of that translator app?
I did, Jonathan. It's called iTranslate.
Okay. So just the letter I.
iTranslate.
Okay.
I have it on iPhone. I don't know if it's available on Android. It probably is. It's $5, and the thing is absolutely astonishing.
Great. We'll put that in the show notes below if anybody's interested in picking that up.
Fantastic. Well, this has been great, Pete. We've enjoyed this. Has gone way longer than any of our other podcasts so far. So is something keeping you in the rat race? We ask our listeners of the Borderless podcast. Do you want to create your own life, one free from the borders others have created for you? If not, that's fine. But why are you listening to our podcast? But if so, maybe you could benefit from re-listening to this podcast with Pete Sisco, entrepreneur, author, digital nomad. Not only did he do it, but he dragged a wife and 6 kids all over the place and has done such a good job. Sounds like they're sort of digital nomads themselves. But also his new book is entitled The Freedom App. That's APP, How to Build True Freedom Through Contractual Republics. It's a fascinating idea. He spent a lot of time researching it, I can tell, a lot of interesting thought cells in it. but also his program, Safely Leave the Rat Race. It's a 5-step mentoring program from those of you, we know there are a lot of you, who would like to leave the rat race, who would like to give out of your borders and do your own thing, perhaps have that location-independent business, live outside of the U.S. or whatever country you're from. So we encourage you to go to his website, PeteSisco.com. If you forget that, we're going to have that in the show notes as well.
So, Pete, is there one piece of advice that you'd like to leave with our listeners?
You know, if I had to give a piece of advice, it would be to consider that you might not now be on the absolute best path for the rest of your life. And if you could open your mind to the possibility that there is a better life that could be engineered for you and by you, it could open your mind to the possibilities. And I think that very much fits with the borderless theme, because the sort of default setting that all of us grow up with is to live inside of imaginary borders. And if you could just open your mind to the possibility that there is something outside of those borders that is actually better for you, then you get your mind going in the right direction, I think.
Pete Sisco, thank you so much for joining us.
It's been great talking to you guys. Maybe we can do it again sometime. It's really been great. And thanks for doing the work you're doing and trying to enlighten people on this, because it's really important work.
We'd love that.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
So what a great guest.
Yeah, no, Pete's great. I'm definitely going to keep in touch with him.
Fantastic. So does this appeal to you, our Borderless podcast? If it does, come join the conversation at borderlesspodcast.com. When you get to that page, you will see the great big Join Here button. And if you click on that, you will join the Borderless movement. This gives you access to our private Facebook page. This way you can tell us what you thought about our guest, maybe something you liked or disagreed with. What else, James?
Yeah, all our guests, a lot of them are on there. You know, I'm on there, Jonathan's on there, so we're able to answer any questions you have. And if you have any suggestions on guests or that kind of thing, then feel free to let us know.
All right, another Borderless podcast coming up soon.
Thanks for joining us for the Borderless Podcast, traveling, investing, and living beyond borders.